Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your questions and the sources you're curious about and really pull out the most interesting insights.
hmm
This time, we're looking at something pretty timeless. How do we figure out who we click with? We're exploring matchmaking, but from two, well, really different angles: astrology back in the day
Yeah,
and our modern thing with data.
exactly. And you, our listener, specifically wanted to get a handle on what drives these compatibility checks, past and present. The goal is to find those aha moments without you getting totally bogged down in information.
Right, to see the why behind it all.
Yeah, the motivations, the beliefs driving these ways of finding a partner.
And you gave us some really fascinating stuff. We've got this academic piece on astrology and matchmaking in early modern Italy. Really specific.
Very specific, yes.
And then switching gears, a couple of modern articles asking if, say, an Aries and a Capricorn can actually make a relationship work, astrologically speaking.
So, quite the contrast there.
Definitely. Okay, let's get into it. Starting way back in Renaissance Italy.
Yeah, and the context there is just crucial. For the powerful families in early modern Italy, marriage wasn't really about, finding the one in a romantic way.
Not like we think of it now.
Not at all. It was strategic. It was about building family power, political alliances. Choosing a spouse was a huge decision, really high stakes.
Okay, so that's where astrology comes in. It wasn't just like reading your horoscope for fun.
Oh, definitely not. It was seen as a legitimate and dependable tool for navigating these massive marriage decisions. A predictive science, almost.
How did they actually use it? What were they looking at?
They use these things called birth horoscopes or genitures.
Mm-hmm.
Think of them like a super detailed astrological snapshot from the exact moment of birth.
Ah, the whole chart, not just the sun sign.
Exactly, the whole celestial setup. Astrologers would pore over these to figure out someone's character, their physical traits, even their moral compass, and then they'd compare charts, see how two people might actually fit together.
And these weren't just any astrologers, right? The article mentions names like Cardano, Garrico.
Yeah, big names. Girolamo Cardano, Luca Garrico, Johannes Garces. Their printed collections of charts and interpretations were like bestsellers among the educated elite across Europe. People took this stuff very seriously.
So practically speaking, what parts of the chart mattered most for marriage?
Well, the birth chart's divided into 12 houses, sort of like pie slices for different life areas. The seventh house was the big one for marriage, obviously.
Right.
But they didn't stop there. The third house, which covered things like love, but also, interestingly, in-laws.
Ah, important.
Very important. And the fifth house, which dealt with children, was also key. Plus, planets like Venus, the planet of love and harmony, its position and aspects were super significant.
So they're comparing these detailed charts, looking for compatibility,
Yeah,
and even trying to pick the right time for the wedding.
absolutely. Comparing the natal charts was step one.
Yeah.
But then, yes, figuring out the most astrologically favorable time for the ceremony, and this is key for the consummation.
For an heir, I'm guessing.
Precisely. To maximize the chances of producing a healthy heir to continue the family line. The article mentions Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. He actively used astrology for his own marriage and his niece's, too.
It wasn't just about, like, personality clashes then. They were looking at physical stuff, too. Health.
Oh, definitely. They used astrology to assess the physical and moral qualities. They believed the stars influenced a person's complexio, their basic physical and temperamental makeup tied to the humoral theory of the body.
Okay, that sounds intense.
It really comes through in the case study of Francesco Sforza and Susanna Gonzaga. Their planned marriage was actually called off
Why?
because Susanna developed a spinal deformity. And that raised serious doubts about her ability to bear healthy children, which was, a primary goal of these elite marriages.
Wow. So what happened then? They considered her sister.
They did, Dorothea. But then, naturally, there was concern she might develop the same issue. So their mother, Barbara Gonzaga, consulted the court astrologer Bartolomeo Manfredi.
To check Dorothea's chart for the same problem.
Exactly. She specifically asked him to look for signs of potential spinal deformity in Dorothea's geniture. Manfredi looked it over and assured her Dorothea's chart was clear, without fault in that area.
But I sense a but coming.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the article notes his prediction was wrong. Dorothea did develop the condition later. It's a stark reminder that even with all this effort, it wasn't foolproof.
So even the experts could get it wrong. But what was the thinking? How could they even believe they could predict something so specific, like a bone issue, from the stars?
The core belief was that celestial influences were incredibly powerful, affecting everything right down to the physical body. Luca Garrico wrote a major text, the Tractatus Astrologicus, detailing how these influences could shape physical development, potentially causing chronic illness or deformities. They even had concepts like gradus asimina, specific degrees in the zodiac thought to be linked to chronic conditions. This wasn't new. They were building on centuries of work by Arabic and medieval astrologers like Alcabitius, Albubater, Ibn Ezra, Guido Bonatti, all focused on reading these signs in nativity charts.
And besides avoiding illness, they must have been keenly interested in fertility, right? Especially for noble families needing heirs.
Absolutely critical. They'd scrutinize the sixth house for health, the fifth for children, along with the seventh for marriage. Astrologers like Abraham Ibn Ezra and Albubater identified specific planetary positions and aspects thought to indicate fertility or lack thereof. Like Venus in Leo was sometimes seen as tricky for having kids.
It's just amazing the level of detail. And they didn't stop at health and fertility, did they?
Yeah.
The article mentions using astrology to assess sexuality.
Yeah.
With Livia Vernazza.
Yes, that's a really striking example. An astrologer named Fernando Magnani interpreted Livia's chart. And based on Mars and Venus placements, he suggested she might have attractions towards women. This reading was done in the context of her known difficult marriage and her quite public relationship with Don Giovanni de' Medici.
So they linked her chart interpretation directly to her known life circumstances.
Exactly. It shows how deeply ingrained the belief was that the stars could reveal even the most intimate aspects of a person's nature and desires.
It's quite something. This incredibly comprehensive astrological approach, trying to map out health, fertility, compatibility, even sexuality. And, while it clearly wasn't always right, Dorothea's case proves that the belief in it was so strong.
It really was.
Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? About how much we rely on, say, algorithms today for dating apps. They can be flawed too, but we still trust them to guide us.
That's a fantastic parallel. Both systems, worlds apart in time and method, are fundamentally about trying to reduce uncertainty in choosing a partner, trying to impose some order on the chaos of human connection.
Okay, so let's pivot from Renaissance charts to, today's take on astrological compatibility.
Yeah.
Specifically, Aries and Capricorn, based on the articles you looked at.
Right. And it's a big shift. We go from those hyper-personalized, complex Renaissance readings to often more generalized sun sign compatibility, the kind you might see in popular magazines.
Yeah, the article mentioned Cosmopolitan and Vogue Paris still run these, even though serious astrologers often say sun signs alone are way too simplistic.
Exactly. But for this dive, we looked at what places like AstroSage, Times of India, Ghost Media, and How Stuff Works say about Aries meeting Capricorn. And the general consensus, it's complicated.
Not exactly a match made in heaven, then.
Often described as challenging, yeah. Their basic natures are just very different. Aries is fire impulsive, energetic, needs action now. Capricorn is earth practical, disciplined, cautious, plays the long game.
Fire and earth. Doesn't sound immediately harmonious.
AstroSage even calls them natural enemies, which is pretty strong language. The Times of India gives them a 70% compatibility rating, calling it medium, so, doable, but it suggests definite hurdles.
But is there any initial attraction? Sometimes opposites attract, right?
Well, the sources do suggest that. Aries' boldness and confidence can apparently draw in the more reserved Capricorn. And Capricorn's quiet ambition, their stability, that can appeal to Aries' sometimes scattered energy.
Okay, so there might be a spark.
Yeah. Times of India mentions potential strong physical chemistry initially. The differences can be intriguing at first.
But then the day-to-day reality kicks in. What are the main sticking points, according to these sources?
It mostly boils down to their core approach. Aries wants to leap, Capricorn wants to plan. Aries might see Capricorn as slow, maybe even cold or boring.
And Capricorn?
Capricorn might find Aries impulsive, maybe tactless, too hot-headed, and just generally risky. Times of India also flags potential power struggles, Aries wanting control versus Capricorn relying on logic and, being right.
Sounds like a recipe for arguments. Are there any saving graces? Any ways their differences could actually work for them?
Yeah, there are potential strengths. AstroSage points out they're both cardinal signs, meaning they're both initiators. They like to get things started, even if they do it differently.
Okay, so shared ambition, maybe.
Shared ambition, competitiveness often, an appreciation for hard work. And if they can find a balance, Capricorn could offer structure and grounding for Aries' brilliant ideas. Aries could push Capricorn to, have a bit more fun, take a few more chances.
Does it matter what kind of relationship it is? Like business versus romance?
It seems to. The sources suggest nuances. Business partnership may be good if roles are clear. Capricorn strategizes, Aries drives it forward. Friendship, possible with shared interests, but watch out for those power dynamics. Compromise is key.
And love or marriage, that sounds like the real test.
That definitely seems to require the most work. Different life philosophies, really. Aries might rush in. Capricorn analyzes everything. For marriage, the advice consistently points towards needing to consciously work as a team, really valuing the different strengths each brings.
So if an Aries and a Capricorn do want to make it work romantically, what's the main advice?
Across the board, it's communication, compromise, and mutual respect. Like really seeing and appreciating the differences, not just tolerating them. Aries needs patience. Capricorn needs to perhaps loosen the reins a bit, allow for more spontaneity.
Even in physical intimacy.
Yeah, How Stuff Works touches on that. Different styles, adventurous versus maybe more reserved. Again, communication and willingness to meet halfway are highlighted as essential.
It's really interesting, isn't it? You've got Renaissance astrologers doing these incredibly detailed chart comparisons, and then modern takes on sun signs. But underlying it all is this same attempt to understand differences and figure out how to bridge them.
That's a great point. Whether you're looking at planetary positions from the 16th century or personality traits linked to zodiac signs today, or even, answers on a dating profile.
Right, the algorithms.
Exactly. It's all trying to do a similar thing. Make a more informed choice about a partner. Translating some kind of data, celestial, biographical, whatever, into a story about compatibility.
It really speaks to that deep human need to feel like we're making a smart choice, an informed choice, especially in something as important as love. We seem to crave some kind of system.
We do. And it's also interesting that both the old astrology and modern approaches often go deeper than just, do we get along? The Renaissance astrologers worried about health, fertility, even sexuality. Modern dating sites ask about kids, life goals, values.
So it's always been about more than just surface attraction.
Seems that way, trying to gauge long-term suitability.
So stepping back from all this, from the sources consulting their astrologer to modern Aries Capricorn advice, what's the main takeaway for you?
I think the big insight is just how constant this human quest is. The quest to find patterns, to get some kind of handle on romantic compatibility. The tools change dramatically from astrolabes to algorithms. But that fundamental desire to understand, predict, and find a successful partnership, that seems pretty unwavering through history.
That's a great summary. It really makes you wonder, though, this long history, this modern reliance on data. What does it say about our need for structure, maybe even perceived certainty in love, which is often so messy and unpredictable? Is the data, whether it's stars or survey answers, actually helping us make better choices? Or is it maybe just helping us feel better about the choices we were already leaning towards? Maybe reinforcing our own biases. Something for you to definitely think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.